In a world of fact-checking, cancel culture, fake news, and big money, example BlackRock, controlling the legacy media and social media is hard to know what is real and not real at the moment. In a sea of what can best be described as Wokeville, it's great to see such a long-standing, independent, non-biased news outlet still going. Thank you very much, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, UK Column!
Hello. Okay, well, it's really fantastic to be here. This is a live UK column news event. And what we're going to do is we're going to run through some newsy sort of topics, and then we'll make enough time for questions, because we very much want to engage with you, the audience, because I've been told, allegedly, you're all very nice people. And what I'd just like to say, first of all, is we always remember all of the people who've been with us for a long time, because it was the people that supported us and donated to us in those very early years that made the difference. And I remember when we were doing live talks then, people would come up to us and they would press £20 into our hands, or a fiver, or you get a cheque for £25. And it was a lot of relatively small donations which actually made it happen. And then later there were one or two, I'm going to say, more mature people who were very generous to us. And there is no way that we could have made this what it is today without the help of all those tremendous people who donated and supported us. And it's the members that count, because there are a lot of people who watch the news, but they don't support us in any other way. And this is a great shame, because if we had more members supporting us, and we think that £5 a month is a very modest contribution, but if we had more people, it would enable us to expand faster. And that's what we've been trying to do. So we're saying thank you to you. Big thank you if you've been a long-standing member. If you're not a member of UKColumn yet, perhaps you'd consider doing that, because that'd make our day. Should we kick off? Yes. Okay, well, I get the first speaking slot. I don't know why that is, but I created the first slide. So if we could pop that up on screen. The important thing, thanks very much, Stephanie. It's, can you guys see that at the back? Well, I wanted to say a big thank you to the organisers of this event. So can we give the organisers of the Sounds Beautiful Festival a really big round of applause? Okay, so on screen is a picture of a little camping table and a chair and a kettle. And I saw this when I was up quite early in the morning, and it just appealed to me for lots of reasons. Now, of course, you realize that this is a fake photograph. Why? Ah, well done. Right, so this wasn't this morning. This was actually very early yesterday morning, and I just wandered around with a camera. I was very discreet. But I took a picture of this because it was just lovely, the blue kettle shining in the sunlight there. But it talks, it tells you something else. The people who left their kettle out on the table trusted everybody else here. And so there's a great little lesson out of this, that here we are all at a campsite. We got cars, we got cameras, we got equipment, we got money. And I have not met anybody who's unduly concerned, because everybody here is a friend. And this is how life should be. And I'm also old enough to know that not so many years ago, this was true for people in their houses. They didn't lock the back door, they didn't lock the doors, because they trusted their neighbours. So with respect to people of a certain age, one of our advantages is that we can actually be a bit nostalgic and we can remember back. And it's no coincidence that some of the organisations have been talking about the need to remove nostalgia, because they don't want people remembering life as it was. Now, I'll just take you on to another picture. This is actually the UKColumn Village. So this is our little group of tents. But when I took this photo, I was pretty astonished because I noticed this, and I thought, my goodness, that's quite a bonfire they're planning down there. Okay, so I'll maybe come back onto that. But I sat there in my chair and I thought at 6:45 this morning about what I was going to talk about. Sometimes we prepare well in advance, sometimes you just leave it to see what comes to you. And I sat in the chair this morning, so that's also yesterday morning in the View, just to have a think through what was going on. And of course, the key bit was elections. And I'm saying it's a scam. It's an absolute scam. It's a puppet theatre. So the same old, nothing really changes. The colours change, but the policies don't. This is very clear. And I think more and more people can recognise this now, that it's just a pantomime played out for us. Now, the politicians, I think they're largely puppets. I think they're controlled. And one of the key ways that they're controlled is the whips, but I'll mention them again in a couple of seconds. But the key thing is we know that amongst the politicians, there is a climate of fear. They know enough about their own system and problems in that system to be fearful of it. And that's pretty incredible if they claim that they're the key drivers of a democracy to keep us all safe. So what am I talking about? Well, if we talk to politicians who are speaking out, we might choose Andrew Bridgen. He's another one of the politicians that says, yes, I've got support from other MPs, but the trouble is they're all scared. They are scared that they will do to them what was done to Andrew Bridgen. So this idea that we're in an upstanding democratic state is simply nonsense. And it's the power of the funders to the parties, millions of pounds going in from individuals or big corporations to all the main parties. So the real power isn't the political power, it's the people who supply the funding to keep that political power going. We've got the power of the whips. Now, I've put a name up there. Every one of you should know who Peter... have I got the right name up? I might... I just looked at it and all of a sudden, boom, it's the wrong person. I'm looking for Tim Fortescue, thank you. Okay, well, it's live, so that's fine. So why, all right, let's do it the other way around. Peter Sutherland is the UN ambassador for migration. And he made a statement which said that basically we need more mass migration within the European Union in order to break down the homogeneity of the nation state. So all this business that migration is some sort of accidental thing and people are moving continents to look for work, no, it's created misery. So that man had been in my mind, but the whip I was interested in, give me Tim Fortescue. If you go on to YouTube and put in, just put in BBC whip Tim Fortescue, there's a very old BBC documentary where they interview this man who's a whip during Ted Heath's government. And he talks about the role of the whips. And he says, well, the MPs could come to us with a problem and we, the whips, would fix the problem. It might be a problem with money. They might have been indiscreet. It could be a problem with little boys. But we fixed it for them because once we fixed it, they would do as we asked. And then he looks at the camera and he says, you may think this is a little bit hard, but that's the way we worked. So here was somebody admitting to camera that when they encountered people who were abusing children, it was covered up in order to control the MPs themselves. So it's pretty strong stuff. Reform. A lot of people getting very excited about reform. Now, I'm going to say straight off, I think there's some very good, genuine people who've stood up as reform candidates. Do I personally trust Nigel Farage? I'm afraid I don't, because I saw what he did to UKIP. But a lot of people are thinking because Nigel Farage has stood up, they don't have to do anything anymore. Nothing could be further from the truth. If we're to change the system, we've got to do things individually and in groups, and we mustn't rely on anybody to do it, including the UK column. Small parties and the independents, there's a lot of them this election, and we would say that if you want to make a difference, vote for those people, because they might not get in, but the number of votes that goes to the independents and the new small parties gets noticed by the big boys, and they worry about it. And those small parties need support. The other thing to remember is that if you haven't got another candidate in your election ward, you can spoil your vote. And why is this a positive thing? Because if you spoil your vote by writing on the vote something polite, sensible, I don't trust any of these parties, that comment is read out in front of the candidate. So each spoiled vote has to be identified as a spoiled vote in front of the candidates. So if you end up with thousands of spoiled votes, this is a big rock in the election, the fraudulent election pond. I've got support here for that comment. Brilliant. It's all right. That's okay. So if you never thought of this before, you're entitled to do it. Some people use bad language or say things which are aggressive. You don't need that. Just make your views known that you're not supporting any of the parties. Now, I don't want to labour a point, but when I said there was a problem with this fire, I really meant there was. We had a chat with the boys that sometimes this sort of stuff gets out of hand. Now, we're camping. UK column are camping, but we know some of you are glamping. Anybody here in one of these? Oh, okay. So you're there all amongst the luxury. So let's go on through a few things that are coming up in this election. And this is one of the key statements. Britain is broken. And we say, no, it isn't. It has been broken. This was calculated. It's orchestrated, and the policies that the individual parties bring in, they always overlap, they always continue, and they are creating the decline in the country. Now, there's a couple of names there, Nick Bowles, Danny Kruger, and Eric Pickles. Well, I'm throwing those at you because the UK columns mentioned these people a lot of times. Nick Bowles, an Conservative MP, on public record saying that the Conservatives plan to introduce a period of creative destruction in order to bring in their new society. Creative destruction. That's what we're seeing going on in the NHS. Danny Kruger was a parliamentary candidate. He told the same story with slightly different words. He said that they were going to introduce chaos. And that's what we can see around us. It's created, it's deliberate, it's orchestrated. And Eric Pickles, he was a bit portly gentleman, and he was the communities minister. And he's on public record as saying that he may look like an unlikely revolutionary, but be it under no illusion, those were his words, the revolution starts here. We are in a revolution created by these people. And the start of the revolution is to destroy society as we know it. It's destroy the old so that they can bring in the new. And you've heard this one, build back better, right? Destroy, chaos, mayhem, and then they're going to build what they want. And the society we see coming is not that tremendous. Levelling up, that doesn't mean levelling up, it means levelling down. It means flattening stuff for them to introduce what they're doing. So words and what they say is important. And this is a phrase I've known for a lot of years. I don't know who actually said it, so we just take it as it is. But the revolution always eats its young. And what they mean is that the people who create the revolutionary process to destroy a country, to create the new society, when that new society comes into power, it destroys the people that helped create it in the first place. So we're talking vicious politics here. And what do these people love? War. So if you think about it, Iraq, war and chaos, and Libya and Syria, and now we're into Israel, Gaza, and Ukraine. And if I just let this one run a little bit, this is a very sad, should run, you're gonna run? Yeah. This is a very sad little clip of the mass graves in Ukraine. And of course, the one thing that nobody's talking about in UK at the moment is the number of dead in Ukraine. Estimates are up around the 400, 500,000 dead on the Ukrainian side, and maybe as many as 100,000 on the Russian side. Does the BBC talk about this? Do the MPs talk about it? No, because they are callously using the Ukrainians as the proxy war. So I've looked around here and I've watched people, and I can't see anybody here that gets up in the morning with a cup of tea and says, darling, I think it would be good to have a war today. So there's nothing wrong with us. Well, it's very easy to see that we've got politicians that we simply can't trust because they are not stopping this violence and the killing. They are increasing it by pumping in the weapons. So this is the BBC. I had to start with the BBC because it's such an easy target, but I always like to see exactly what it's got to say. And here is Sunak. He's going to be live, apparently, and there's mention of Laura Kusenberg. We'll come on to her. But if I just do something magical with this particular image, I looked at this and it was bottom left that caught my attention. So let's expand it. So we got this really weird cartoon image, and the bloke's almost got a dunce's cap on, and he's thinking, he's very confused, he needs some help as who to vote for. Presumably he's going to take advice from the BBC. And then the girl, she's just drinking her coffee. Does she know what she's going to vote for? But this is childish, and yet it's supposed to be for adults. So are we these people that this little ad thing is relating to? And if we are the people the BBC is talking to in this form, they are insulting us. They are treating us like ignorant children, and we should not accept this. So a bit more into the BBC, and it's our friend Keir Starmer, but just look at him. He's got the suit on and the tie and the glasses, and he's basically saying, trust me, because he's courting veterans and military people. He was down in Aldershot. So trust me, I'm going to look after you. How am I going to do it? I'm ready for the next war. And they are already talking about a form of conscription to get youngsters into. So we need to deal with these people and call them out. And he's also the man, of course, who was scurrilous in saying he's not really interested in Westminster. He can only get business done in Davos. So he's saying he's not interested in this country or the democratic systems with all their faults. He's saying he's going to do his business elsewhere. So this was the headline that really grabbed my attention. Sunak to face BBC's Laura Kusenberg. What does that mean, to face her? Who is this woman? Is she the person that adjudicates on who's going to be elected? Face, what does it mean? And then it added days before vote. So what does that mean? What does that headline actually mean? Because I don't know. But I always look at the detail of the BBC because they always play with words. They are messing with your brains the moment you start to look at the material. So that's what it said. Here's the gorgeous young lady, power dressing. She's got the red jacket on, so this is the roughy toughy stuff. And she was going to interview a load of people. But if you're going to have a look at who they are, it's really who they're not, because where are the independents? Where are the new candidates? Where are the people challenging the system? They're not in her debate. And this, of course, is because we're in elections which are a racket. And the small people are being squashed out because many of them can't even get on stage at one of the hustings. I need to speed up. So where are the other parties? But this is the image that the BBC website put across. So they couldn't even choose something that was real. You've got this synthetic mix of a studio and number 10 Downing Street. And in the discussion, the Prime Minister responds saying the last few years have been difficult, but the United Kingdom is in a better place than 2010. Does anybody believe that? Because, no, all right. Okay, we're on the same page. Well, this is the BBC hitting one of the smaller parties. Now, we're short for time, so I can't cover all the little parties. I chose this one because here's David Curtin on the BBC. What have they done with him? Well, in the article, the BBC tells the reader within the first few lines that it's a right-wing party. And of course, a lot of people will immediately switch off. So the BBC brands them at the top of the article as being right-wing before it describes to the reader what they're really doing. And of course, they choose what I call a shouty image. So the image is taken when he's got his mouth open, and this is the man who's raging at the microphone, big open mouth, aggressive. This is deliberate manipulation of people. This is the real man when we interviewed him with UKColumn. He's actually very quiet and measured and reasonable, but the BBC doesn't show him in the same way. But he was quoted in the BBC there as saying that the country was in decline. It was being destroyed. The institutions were being destroyed. And I have to say, I completely agree with what this man is saying, because he understands that there's a war against us. And this one also came up, and I thought, wow, this is interesting. So the headline is Lessons to Help Ukrainian Children Remember Heritage. So the BBC won't cover the Heritage Party in UK, but when it comes to Ukrainian children, we're to teach Ukrainian children their own heritage. That's a good thing, I think. Now, I wanted to mention this lady, Kim Isherwood, and she's one of the ladies in Wales that have been speaking out about the appalling sex education for very young children. And if in this audience there's still mums and dads who are not aware of this stuff that's going on in schools, you need to be, because it is utterly disgusting. And what's happening here is that a group of mums, this lady is one of them, have been taking action. They've been trying to take the Welsh government, well, they did take the Welsh government to court, but of course the Welsh government's got tons of money to protect itself. But nevertheless, in the publicity, they caused great upset in the establishment, because ordinary people, in this case many women with some men, some dads, were able to challenge the government in Wales about these educational policies for the children, causing very, very young children great stress and angst. If we just do the basic one, that you have little girls and little boys that are just trying to learn about being alive, being told that they don't even know whether they are a girl or a boy. So I just wanted to say, never ever give up. If you're out there fighting the system, each and every one of you is important in what you do. This is just me saying on a key subject that I've covered over many years. You have to understand that the political system wants your children, wants our children. In Scotland, and it was David Scott that talked about this some time ago, but the Scottish government putting in a named person, and that person was to be the child's guardian appointed by the state from conception. And in an open debate, a female Scottish MP, I should have checked the name, it's gone out of my head at the moment, but this lady was on record. She's talking to the audience and they were fighting back a little bit. And she said, well, don't worry, you, the parents, will also have a role in bringing up your children. Right? So there is no doubt about where they're going. And this lady is on screen because she's came to UK as a refugee. She was trafficked. She went through a horrible experience and brutally used before she got to this country. And then when she gets here with one child she was able to bring across to live in UK with her. Then she had another child. And what happens, those two children have been taken away from her. She's never hurt them, she's never done anything to them, all on the risk of future emotional harm, decided in a court with a judge and no jury and no press. And I stand here, and I've said this many times from the stage, the family court system is a closed court. And if you get into it, you have no way of getting justice because it's a star chamber. Everything is against you. Are they taking children, hundreds of them, thousands of them, under false pretenses, lies, perjury, false documentation, false accusations? It's an industry. And our future is the children. So if we don't get to grips with this, okay, I'm getting a bit long in the tooth now, but I've got grandchildren and I'm thinking, blimey, if we don't stop this, they have no security against the state simply taking your children. And some people think, well, you know, I'd get macho man and aggressive and I'd stop them. No, what would happen is you'd be in prison pretty quickly because they're already putting particularly the mums in prison for daring to speak up. So I'm not going to do more on it. You can go to the UK column and see some of the interviews we've done warning about this, but it's a really big subject because the children are our future.